Hello, biology students, and here is a quick overview of types of inheritance patterns. So we can sort of understand whether or not a gene or trait is dominant or recessively expressed by looking at individuals throughout generations, whether they're biological males or biological females, and whether they express a trait, usually coded in black, or they don't in white. And this only really um, applies to traits that are binary. Either they have it or they don't. Pedigrees can show codominant or incomplete dominance, but they are a little bit more complicated. So autosomal dominant, autosomal meaning that traits that aren't linked to sex tend to have an expressed phenotype in every generation if a breeding pair displays the trait in one or two adults. So if we look at our first example, we have two traits or two individuals, male and female, that have a dominant trait, and two out of their three children have that trait. So that trait is more commonly expressed. 3 and 4 has a dominant and a recessive individual, and 1 out of 2 of their children have a dominant trait. Many dominant phenotypes tend to be the most common or normalized version of a trait. So they tend to be what we call normal traits. 5 fingers, right-handedness, brown eyes, brown hair. These are the traits that we tend to see more commonly in a population. However, because the concept of a dominant allele means that that one version of the gene makes the other gene that you inherit from your mom or dad irrelevant, there are some diseases that are dominantly inherited. Dwarfism and Huntington's diseases are both genetic disorders that are coded by a dominant allele, which means that if you inherit one dominant allele for Huntington's or dwarfism, you will express both of those phenotypes. Huntington's disease is a neurodegenerative disease that in your mid-30s, your body basically starts to shut down. And both of these have to do with abnormal protein formation when the genes are expressed. I would like you to try and describe the likely genotypes of individuals 1, 2, 4, 6, and 7, thinking about the two versions of the gene that they carry. You could make it any letter, A, B, C, F, you name it. What are the two alleles for the genes in 1, 2, 4, 6, and 7? And then thinking about number 5, what is the probability that number 5 marries a phenotypically recessive individual, little a, and they have children that display the recessive trait? Autosomal recessive traits tend to be rarer and they tend to skip generations. So when we talk about autosomal traits, they are traits that tend to have an expressed phenotype in generations only if both parents display the phenotype or both parents are carriers or are homozygous recessive. So many diseases are recessive traits such as cystic fibrosis or sickle cell anemia. Albinism or the lack of pigmentation is also a recessive disease. Often in carriers, big A, little a, heterozygous individuals, there's usually enough properly formed proteins that are created to make the phenotype of the recessive allele not really be displayed. So if we take a look at this generation, this family 1, 2, 1, 2, the mom and dad must both be carriers if their first child, a son, is recessive, but these two likely don't show the phenotypic expression because they have a copy of the normal protein. So I want you to describe for me likely the genotypes of individuals 1A and 2A, of 1B, 3B, 4B, and also 1 and 2C. Sorry, I totally got that wrong. So what I want you to do is describe the genotypes of 1 and 2A, that's generation A, generation 1B, generation 3B, generation 4B, and generation 1 and 2C. Sorry about that. And can we definitively say that the children of 3B and 4B won't have any children with the recessive allele? Can we definitively say that either of these individuals won't have a recessive individual as their child in generation 4. Now, X-linked traits are traits that are coded by the X chromosomes, and many of these traits are not related to sex, but it happens that males only inherit one X chromosome, the other being Y, and females have 2 copies of the X chromosome. So what that means is that males are either homozygous dominant or recessive. They're either big X or little x. Females can be big X, big X, big X, little x, or 2 little x's. So they can be homozygous dominant or recessive or heterozygous. Now, traits coded on the X chromosome tend to be expressed at higher frequencies in males, such as color blindness. So about 1 in 8 males have some level of color blindness because the genes that code for your ability to see color are found on the X chromosome. Females, on the other hand, have a much lower rate of color blindness, about 1 in 100. My question for you to think about is, despite a female being recessive in generation 1, right here, little x, why is there more males in subsequent generations that display the trait? Why are there more males in generation 2 and 3 that are recessive? And you should consider that, or explain that, considering the inheritance of either X or Y chromosomes in biological males or females. So to sum up the 3 traits again, when we're looking at traits that tend to be dominant, that are autosomal, we're going to tend to see both or one individuals in a parent generation express it, and many of their children will have it. The only way you don't have kids express it is if both parents don't have a dominant gene. While most dominant genes are common, there are some diseases that are dominantly inherited, which means the one copy trumps the other. Many traits are recessive if both parents don't display the trait, but their child does display the trait. And then finally, X-linked traits are found more commonly in males because of the XY chromosomal makeup.